We're joined by council members Chambliss, Vento, Muse, Cummings, Lindstrom, Atlas Ingerbritsen, and I believe Councilmember Wolf is in the back and will be joining us. And Councilmember Johnson will not be joining us. Joined on the dais by Lisa Barajas, the Director of Community Development, and our recording secretary, Ms. Michelle Winter. So welcome, everyone. This is our first committee meeting together. I look forward to working on a very productive time here. And we will move right into the approval of the agenda. If I could get a motion, please.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. We are going to start with introductions to the community development.
Excuse me, point of order. We
Yes.
have to approve the minutes.
Thank you so much. We have to approve the minutes, approval of the minutes. Councilmember Wolf, I think, is the only council member on this committee that was actually at the February 19th committee meeting. But I would seek a motion of approval from one of the committee members.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Now we will move into the introduction of the Community Development Division with the Director, Ms. Barajas, also Terry Smith, and Deputy Director Libby Starling will be joining in the presentation. Welcome, Ms. Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Before we get into our business today, we wanted to give you a very high-level overview of the work that our division does and that comes through this committee as well. With each of our agenda items as we bring business through, we'll also give you a more in-depth overview of those items too, so you know what you're acting on or we're asking you to act on that. But also wanting you to get a sense of the staff that will be in front of you. We'll also be sure to introduce each of us too. I know that there's a whole lot of new people for everybody to learn, so it's okay if you need to ask our names or remind us to tell us your names or tell you our names. So we're happy to do that as well. I'm joined today by Libby Starling, our Deputy Director of Community Development, and Terry Smith, our Director of our Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So we'll give you this very high-level overview today. In the Community Development Committee, in the division, our division is responsible for these items on the screen that first and foremost that we provide the coordinated planning and policy to guide the growth and development of the region. And you may recall last week when I met with you on Wednesday that I talked about how this division was originally the regional planning portion of the council before the Reorganization Act in the 90s, where environmental services and transit came into the broader Met Council umbrella. So that function still lives here. So Thrive, Housing Policy Plan, Regional Parks Policy Plan are all coordinated by this division. We partner with the regional parks implementing agencies to plan for and fund that regional park system. We provide technical assistance to our local governments through our local planning assistance work unit, coordinated through there and their sector representatives, but also in coordination with staff from across the divisions in the council. We facilitate a lot of community collaboration on issues that are of importance to local governments, and as staff and local governments tell us about them. We also deliver that state and federally funded rent assistance programs, which Terry is going to tell you more about today, actually. And then the Livable Communities Act programs, grants are those grant programs that you hear a lot about over the course of the regular work program over the calendar year that help clean up polluted sites, expand housing choices, and help build developments that connect housing, jobs, and people's services together. And finally, the research function serves not just our division, but across the council, really analyzing the growth and development patterns of the region and all the big issues that are happening and hoping to support better policymaking or more informed policymaking of the council. So as I mentioned earlier, these are the big three documents that this division coordinates and has. So Thrive, the Regional Parks Policy Plan, and the Housing Policy Plan. Thrive and housing policy we do on the decennial cycle, so every 10 years. Regional parks is required to be done every 4 years under statute, so we try to make those line up as best that math lets us. In local planning assistance specifically, you'll hear most about this year is the review of comprehensive plans, which were due to the council at the end of last year, and some continue to come in this year. You're going to hear more about the council's role in comprehensive planning at our committee of the whole this Wednesday. But this is where your sector reps are housed. You have staff with local planning experience that work at the council now that are reviewing both comprehensive plan updates and environmental documents, as well as providing local technical assistance to those local governments as they're working through those and working through development in their plans. Environmental reviews we'll talk about at another date as well, but the bulk of the work that you'll see this year will be in this realm. This unit, it also contributes to writing the land use policy that is in Thrive and in other policy plans as well. So really summing up, this unit coordinates planning assistance grants. So a good portion of our communities, as you can see in the teeny tiny map, received planning grants to help facilitate the development of their local plans in this cycle. The handbook, which you'll hear local government staff talk a lot about, is the resource that this team coordinated and developed to help local governments understand the requirements in their local comprehensive plans and provide a whole slew of resources to get more out of their plans as well. Sector representatives, which you'll hear and meet more from over the next couple of weeks as well, are housed in this unit. And then over the course of the last 2 years, this unit coordinated the Planet training series, which was in-person and online workshops and webinars to understand the minimum requirements on local plans, as well as additional information on topics to get more out of plans that were identified by local government staff. And then just a whole repository of resources to help in the local planning process, whether it's a mapping tool, a TOD guide, a climate vulnerability assessment, which you'll hear about at a future committee of the whole meeting, energy, solar and energy resources, or other resources that help local staff kind of bring information and resources to bear to help them better support their policymakers in developing policy in their local plans. This unit helps coordinate that from staff across the council, as well as developing that resources themselves in different topical areas. I'm going to turn it over to Libby next, who will speak on regional park system and the other work units in the regional planning department.
Ms. Starling, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Libby Starling. I'm the Deputy Director of the Community Development Division. And recognizing that I may in part lose your attention, I am distributing copies of the Regional Park System map because that provides the best grounding for thinking about what the Regional Park System is. So the Council oversees is perhaps the best verb, the regional park system. They are not state parks, they are not local parks, but rather they're regional parks and trails. So we do like to think of these as essentially the state parks serving the residents of the metropolitan area. So these are large, generally nature-based parks that serve a regional audience. So these are the parks that you'll see that have natural resource-based recreation opportunities. They're often focused on water bodies, and they're not the place for the basketball court or other pieces that the local park provides. Rather, these are the very large, serving a regional audience. And I encourage you to take a copy of the map, study it, understand what regional parks are. And there are more copies that I send around than members before me. So take extras. We have many, and we encourage you to send those out. So in thinking about the regional park system, the key thing is that the council does not own the regional park system. Rather, we work with the 10 regional parks implementing agencies who are identified in state statute. So these are laid out on the map before you, but we have the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, the City of St. Paul, the City of Bloomington. We have Anoka County, Washington County, Dakota County, Scott County, Carver County, Ramsey County, and then the Three Rivers Park District. So when the council puts out its money for regional parks, by state law, we can only pass our regional parks resources to the 10 regional parks implementing agencies. When we look at the entire regional park system, and this is on the map that is before you, we currently count 44 regional parks, 12 park reserves, which are geographically larger and have a lot of land and conservation uses. Special recreation features, for example, the Como Zoo and Como Conservatory are special recreation features. And at this point, we have 49 regional trails that are open. And overall, we count about 58 million visits to the regional park system in 2017. Our favorite talking point on that is that's more than the Mall of America. So in terms of our specific roles in the regional park system, there are really three. And these are the items that will be coming before you as the Community Development Committee after they're coming to you from recommendations from the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen is the liaison to what we call MPOS. And so the three buckets of regional parks work that will come before you. One is the policy plan that Lisa already mentioned. So that, according to state law, must be updated at least once every 3 years. That was last updated this last fall of 2018.
You said 3, it's 4.
For Councilmember Wolf knows the system well. At least once every 4 years. And that is something that we haven't yet gotten the 2018 update into the communication approved pretty version. We'd be happy to distribute or send the links out to the other version, but reviewing the policy plan is a role of this committee. Master plans. So the implementing agencies are responsible for assembling master plans for all of the units in the regional park system. So there will be new master plans that come forward. So areas that have not had any master planning, you will see those. Or there are amendments to the master plans that lay out how the entire plan works, and there are expectations about what needs to be in master plans in the Regional Parks Policy Plan. And then the final piece is regional parks funding. So the council passes through money that is obtained through the state legislature, whether that's the Parks and Trail Legacy Fund, operations and maintenance funding, capital bonding, and many of those funding sources are matched by council bonds and distributed generally by formula allocations, sometimes other ways to the parks implementing agencies. Because there are regional parks items on today's agenda, Emmett Mullen will give you a little bit more introduction on the regional park system today, and then we'll have a fuller briefing on that schedule for your April 15th meeting. Next up is the Metropolitan Livable Communities Act programs. And these are funding sources that were created by state statute in 1995 to fund cities and local governments in creating compact and connected development patterns. The request for funding is open to cities right now, and there's about $21 million that the council is expecting to distribute to cities and the occasional township in 2019. Now, one key thing to know about the livable communities is that under statute, a city has to go through a process in order to participate in the Livable Communities Act programs. So the requirements are that the city must adopt affordable and life cycle housing goals, establish a housing plan, and spend what in statute is called an affordable and life cycle housing opportunity amount in their own budget in order to be eligible. Additionally, participating communities have to be consistent with council policy, so an additional piece of this. And at this point, there are 96 cities that have chosen to participate in the Livable Communities program. Inside the Livable Communities, there are 4 what we think of as programs. The first is the tax-based revitalization account. The tax-based revitalization account is what cleans up polluted land and restores brownfields to tax-based bearing activities. So this is a funding source that is used for livable wage jobs as well as for housing. In 2019, there's $6.4 million that is available in the tax-based revitalization account. Next up is the local housing incentives account, and this is explicitly for expanding housing choices in providing funding to support the creation and preservation of affordable housing in the region. In 2019, there's $2.5 million available in the local housing incentives account. Then there's the Livable Communities Demonstration Account. The Livable Communities Demonstration Account, known as LCDA, is focused on connecting housing, jobs, and transit, promoting compact development, and placemaking opportunities across the region. In 2019, there's $7.5 million available in the LCDA. And then there's a special category of the Livable Communities Demonstration Account to support explicitly transit-oriented development. So the regular Livable Communities Demonstration Account has one set of scoring criteria. The TOD program has a slightly different set of scoring criteria. And these support projects that are in transit station areas or along high frequency transit corridors. In 2019, we have made $5 million available for that funding source. And we'll be providing more detail on the Livable Communities Act programs at your April 1st meeting. So that will be coming at the next meeting. And then my final piece is to remind you that you have a fabulous staff of council researchers who are available to have all sorts of data and information about the Twin Cities area. So information about demographics, so population today, population in the future, development patterns, how many new units of housing have been created, how many are affordable, how many jobs exist in different parts of the region, how many people visit our regional parks. So these are ongoing data sources that council research has. So as you have questions about really many of the things that are under your responsibility as members of the Metropolitan Council, ask council research. We might have data at our fingertips or in our website. You could skip to the next one. And then there's an extensive amount of analysis of both the data, there are reports that are released on an ongoing basis, and then increasingly our staff is using the web to create dashboards, special applications, other data portals in such a way that you can find out many things that you want to know about the region, whether that is understanding how disparities by race and ethnicity in our region compare to other regions. That's one visualization we have up. Or if you want to know what's going on in the cities that you represent, we have community profiles that let you, at a fingertip, know how many affordable housing units have been built in a region, or what's the racial and ethnic mix, or what's the median income, or how much land is in agricultural uses. We have an array of information that is available to you. I encourage you to play in that section of the website, and Terry will take us home.
Good
Ms. Smith.
afternoon. Mr. Chair and council members, I'm happy to be with you today. I met some of you at the reception, so nice to see you again. Some of you are new to me, so I'm happy to be with you tonight. I have two short slides here because the next item is really a broader overview of the HRA. So I kind of see the division, thing happened, we'll wait for it to come back up, as sort of split in two. My colleagues here, Libby and Lisa, are sort of the planners. I am not a planner. I'm an operations gal. And so our work is a little bit different in the division, but the HRA represents about half of the division in terms of the number of employees, but we're really an operational unit. So our formal name is the Metropolitan Council Housing and Redevelopment Authority. We shorten that, and if you've heard of us out in the community, you probably know us as Metro HRA, so that's the language I will use today. But we were created by the Minnesota legislature in 1974. It was at that time that Section 8 of the U.S. Housing Act was adopted. And that law really made it possible for public agencies to make rent assistance payments to private landlords on behalf of low-income families. And so the council was really, the HRA was formed as part of the council to administer these low-income housing programs. The Metro HRA is the largest administrator of tenant-based rent assistance in the state of Minnesota. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about what that means in my next presentation. But we have the largest federal housing choice voucher program, and some of you may know that as Section 8 is the more common term for that. But we serve 7,200 program households with rent subsidy every single month. We distribute about $60 million annually in rent payments to 2,000 private landlords within the region. You will see this map a lot. I hope you're not sick of it by the end of today. But We have the Metro HRA service area is different than the council service area as a whole. So the council does planning and the functions that Libby and Lisa talked about for the entire region. The council's HRA serves the areas in yellow here. So we serve all of Carver County, all of Anoka County, and then suburban Hennepin and Ramsey County with our rent assistance programs. As you will see on this map, we do not serve Minneapolis and St. Paul, both of whom have their own Section 8 program that I will talk a little bit about in further detail in my next presentation. But today we are serving, and you are serving 19,000 households with rent assistance every month. That includes 9,500 children. The average family size that we serve with our voucher program is 2.9 persons. The average income of the families we serve is $16,000. So that equates to $7.69 an hour for a full-time job. Not very much. Tenants on the voucher program and the other rent assistance programs pay about 30% of their income towards rent, making the average family share of rent about $400. And then the HRA makes up the difference in that. So the voucher, the tenant pays 30% of their income and the voucher makes up the difference, and a payment with a federal subsidy to the landlord, and the average subsidy payment that we make today is $740. 46 of our households have wage income, which I think is an important characteristic to note, an important resident characteristic, and 47% are elderly or disabled. So those families that can work do work. So as this map shows here, we are not only the largest housing authority in the region in terms of tenant-based voucher assistance, we also serve the most communities. So we serve about 100 communities in the region with rent assistance programs. And with that very brief introduction, I'm going to stop because I will cover lots more in my next presentation. We can stand.
Questions from council members? Councilmember Vento?
Mr. Chair, Terry, the 46% of households have wage income, 47% are elderly or disabled. So that means that there are 7% that are neither. I mean, I'm doing the math here, and those are pretty impressive numbers when you consider the mystique about housing assistance.
Ms. Smith?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Vento, that's the reason I put that statistic up here. So there are some negative stigmas out in the community about the Section 8 program, and part of my job and the staff that I have in our outreach team, our job is to sort of dispel some of those myths. So the reality is, at this day and age, families have to work. They can't make ends meet unless, if they're not working. So my point in this is, folks that are elderly or disabled generally have Social Security income. Other families that we serve do have wage income.
Right.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be a question for Libby, but in your slide where you show the 2019 participating communities, we have 96 cities participate in Livable Communities program. Considering our changing metro demographics and the economic conditions, is 96 a number where we want to be at or are comfortable at, or do we want to get higher than that? And if so, how will we go about that?
Ms. Starling?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Lee, every year we use the resources that are available to us for the projects that come into us for Livable Communities funding. If we regularly had large sums of money that we were not able to distribute to those communities, then I think it might make sense to actively recruit additional cities to participate in the Livable Communities program. And the last community to join the Livable Communities program in late 2018 was the city of Shakopee, which was an area that was seeing significant amounts of new development coming in. And they had realized that they were leaving the opportunity to apply for Livable Communities money on the table by not participating in the Livable Communities program. As there are additional communities that are not participating that want to participate, there's a process. There has to be an action taken by the city council, an action taken by this council to welcome an additional community into participation into the program. But we do see the majority of cities where development is occurring in the region are participating. And um, many of them are taking advantage of the opportunity to apply for funding. Within the cities that participate, we would like to see more of the participating cities actively work with developers and submit applications. So I think that's really the area where we have the most interest is less on getting more cities to participate and more of the participating cities to submit applications.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions on the presentation? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Excellent.
And Ms. Smith, you're up again with the Housing Redevelopment Authority overview.
I am,
Please.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, and council members. So some of these slides will be a little repeat from what you just heard, but as I indicated, the primary purpose of the Metro HRA here at the council is to administer rent assistance programs for low-income families. The largest program that we administer is the Housing Choice Voucher, known as the Section 8 program here in the region. We also administer 9 other programs that serve low-income families, and they're federal and state funded, and they serve specialized populations such as homeless or disabled. But again, we're serving 7,200 families with rent assistance here in the region. Here again is our service area, all of Anoka and Carver counties, and then suburban Hennepin and Ramsey. I have an asterisk on this slide because some of the programs, some of the smaller programs that we administer, we serve the entire region. For example, we have a temporary assistance program that serves persons living with living as HIV positive, and we serve the entire 7-county region with that. So there are several programs where we serve more of our service area, but the majority of them are in the areas of yellow here. So some program basics, I'm going to tell you a lot of information on this slide and hoping that you'll take a couple of takeaways. For those of you that are not familiar with the voucher program or the Section 8 program, I'm just going to try to tell you some to set the foundation for my next presentation, but then also for additional presentations going forward. But essentially, tenants apply for a waiting list to get a voucher. And not only here at the council, here in the region, but nationally, voucher waiting lists are long, they're closed, and there's not a way people can even get on the waiting list. For example, the council last opened its waiting list in 2015, and at that time, we randomly selected 2,000 applicants for placement on the waiting list. We're coming to the end of that list, and so I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. But when a family comes to the top of the list, essentially they get a letter from us saying, you're at the top of the list. They come in, we determine eligibility, meaning they meet the income requirements for the programs. And to give you an idea, for a family of 4, income must be at or below $47,150. Some people are surprised by that number because it's higher than you might think. But as I indicated in an earlier slide in the earlier presentation, the average income of the families we serve is $16,000. So we're serving extremely low-income families with our programs. Once a tenant is determined eligible, they're issued what's called a voucher. And it's really just a piece of paper that tells a private landlord the HRA will pay part of the rent. So they get their voucher, they go out in the open rental market, and they try to find a unit renting from a private landlord. So under this scenario, the HRA does not own the units. We're utilizing the private rental market, and tenants rent from a private landlord. The program really works as a 3-way partnership. So the tenant enters into a lease with the private landlord. The tenant has obligations with the housing authority, so they need to follow the rules in order to be eligible for assistance, but then in order to receive continued rent subsidy. Tenants can stay on the program as long as they remain program compliant and income eligible. And then the landlord, and the tenant have a subsidy contract. And essentially that contract says the tenant's going to pay you directly 30% of their income, and the housing authority will make up the rest. So the federal voucher makes up the rest. So the landlord receives 2 rent payments every month, one from the tenant and one from the housing authority. An important thing to distinguish here is that participation by landlords is voluntary. So it's a landlord choice in whether they want to participate in the voucher program or really any rent assistance programs. So I think that's an important thing to note. So as I indicated earlier, the housing choice voucher, we have 6,697 vouchers on our program. Excuse me. There are two parts to the Section 8 program. There's a tenant-based program, and under that program, the assistant stays with the tenant. So the tenant moves unit to unit, place to place. The tenant can move out of state if they want. As long as there's a housing authority administering a program, they can move wherever they want with their voucher. And then there are project-based vouchers, and these become tied to specific units within the region. Currently, the Metro HRA has 790 units where we have awarded project-based voucher assistance. In the next presentation I'm going to give you tonight is asking for your approval of some of those project-based voucher units. In addition, the council, I indicated in an earlier slide that tenants are renting from a private landlord, so they're utilizing the private rental market for this program, and the council does not own the units. There's one exception to that. The council owns 150 housing units that were purchased in the early 2000s as a part of a class action lawsuit, and in a couple of slides I'll give you a little more background on that. In addition to the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the Housing Authority administers state and rent assistance programs that serve 600 different families, and those again are serving specialized populations such as homeless, disabled, families working towards self-sufficiency. The council has a new initiative that you may have heard about or saw on the news or read in the newspaper or heard about as part of your orientation, but we have a new partnership with Metro Transit and Metro Transit's Homeless Action Team. And the council's HRA was awarded 89 new federal housing vouchers to provide federal rent assistance to homeless persons utilizing the transit system as temporary shelter. And so that's a new initiative. We were awarded those vouchers in November, which we're really excited about, this creative partnership. We are giving a presentation to the Committee of the Whole on April 4th, where you will hear lots of details on that program. So I talked a little bit about the council-owned housing units. So the council owns 150 units of housing. There's a history of why. Some of you may recall the home and consent decree, but that was a group of public housing residents back in the mid-90s sued Minneapolis Public Housing. The council was named in the lawsuit and several other parties for the concentration of poverty and housing in the city of Minneapolis. And the consent decree that came out of that ordered the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority to demolish 770 units of distressed public housing and redevelop them in non-concentrated areas of the region. I mean, there was really a regional effort to meet the intent of the consent decree by deconcentrating poverty and purchasing units in all areas of the region. So at that time, because of the HRA's regional jurisdiction, suburban jurisdiction, the council was approached to purchase 150 of these units. So we did just that. We received some federal dollars and we went out on the open housing market and we purchased 150 units of scattered site housing. We still own and operate these today, and they're located in 11 cities throughout Anoka, Hennepin, and Ramsey counties. They're 2 to 5 bedrooms, so they serve families with children. We don't have any single units that serve single persons. Really this is a successful program. I think in the beginning when we purchased these units, it met the intent of the consent decree, which was to deconcentrate poverty. What we didn't know then, some of the things that we know now in another program I'm going to talk about, but what happened was families that were displaced in Minneapolis had first choice for these units. But what we didn't do is families moved into these units, we sort of said good luck and here's your new housing unit, and now good luck and we'll see you later. And now we're doing some other things with post-move supports with programs like this to make sure families are successful and to help families remove barriers to success in new neighborhoods. So good lesson learned there. Here's a map of where these 150 units are located. So each blue dot on this map represents a family affordable housing program unit. The areas of yellow are the areas of concentrated poverty within the region. So you can see that most of these units are located outside of areas of concentrated poverty in the region. No two units are alike, so they're all unique. So here's a new program that the council established in December of 2014. It's called Community Choice, and it's a mobility counseling program where we're working with voucher families to move to areas of opportunity. And for this program, areas of opportunity are defined as less than 20% poverty on average by city, and then access to above average school performance. So our wonderful partners in the research unit helped us dig into school performance in all the neighborhoods of the region where the Metro HRA serves the Section 8 program, and came up with a 5-tiered approach to school performance, student performance in schools. And so those are the 2 criteria in order to be considered an opportunity area for this program. But for families that want to make moves to new neighborhoods, this program is intended to help families do so. This family also helps the council meet its equity initiatives outlined in Thrive, ensuring that residents, no matter what economic means they have choice to housing units in all neighborhoods of the region. And so this program helps families do that. I think it's important to note that the council's supportive of a both and approach. So the council's supportive of investing in place to make sure all neighborhoods are good for families to live in, but then also investing in new neighborhoods so that residents have choice to any neighborhood they want to live in. And this program is supportive of that, of the second portion of that. But in the 5 program components are landlord engagement. So we're really, our outreach team, we have a team of 5 outreach workers, and they're working with landlords in the community to recruit landlords for program participation here, but in the broader Section 8 program, dispelling the myths of the program, educating landlords on how it works. It's really quite simple, 5 easy steps, and you can be a participating landlord. And so they're really doing landlord engagement. Participant recruitment for this program, we're focusing on children, families with children under the age of 10. There is some groundbreaking research. I'm not sure if any of you saw the Chetty research that was released out of Harvard in 2015 that shows the benefits and outcomes of children that grow up in low poverty areas, such as higher graduation rates from high school, higher college attendance rates, higher incomes as adults, and improved health due to lower exposures to pollutants, etc. And so this program was designed about that same time to help families move to new neighborhoods. We include a pre-move counseling program for all the participants in this program, and that includes tenant education, financial literacy, overcoming barriers to successful voucher placement. For example, if a tenant has an eviction on their record, we can help them get that expunged. So when they get their voucher, they can be successful in placing it. But it's really defining what opportunity means for every family, because that's different for every family. So we're doing goal setting and those kinds of things to really set the family up for success when they get their voucher. Housing search, our outreach team is doing housing search in all over the region in new neighborhoods, showing them rental units. We have a database that our partners in research helped us develop, but we can put in a unit address and it'll show the neighboring schools. It'll show where they can buy groceries with fresh produce. It'll show parks, it'll open space, all of those kinds of things, jobs, access to transportation, all of those types of things. And then I think perhaps the most important component is the post-move support component to this program. So once a family locates a unit in a new neighborhood and moves in, then our mobility counselors, our outreach staff are engaging with them in their home 4 times a year to help them overcome barriers to success and help them be successful in new neighborhoods. And that perhaps is, I think, a creative model that's really innovative nationwide that we're being used as an example of this post-move support piece. So we're really excited about that. So that's our community choice program. In terms of program funding, 97%
I'm
of
sorry,
our,
Ms. Smith. A question from Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Smith. One question I had is it possible for us to get a map identifying where these schools of, I can't remember the exact words you mentioned, but excellence and also the communities of opportunity?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, council member, absolutely.
Thank you.
The other thing I could mention, if I may, Mr. Chair, is
Yes.
the Metro HRA is creating a partnership right now with Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. They also have a mobility counseling program. And so, as you know, their service area, because they're serving Minneapolis, looks quite different than the suburban locations that we serve. So we're really working on a partnership to have some cross training and cross functionality between our agencies so that we can help serve Minneapolis families. They can help serve our families that move there and make it more of a seamless process for families that are moving across jurisdictions.
Thank you.
So funding, program funding, 97% of the program funding for the Metro HRA comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that's awarded through congressional appropriations. We get about $61 million in subsidy each year, so we get two pots of money. One pot that helps us pay rents on behalf of families, and then one pot of administrative funding that helps us pay our operating costs. Staffing is the main component there. But we get about $61 million in federal subsidy. We get about $5 million in administrative fees. That fluctuates according, depending on congressional appropriations. And then we get a small percentage, 3% from Minnesota Housing, and that is for two smaller programs that serve homeless disabled families, and that's a biannual competitive application process. Who do we serve? I had showed you this slide before, so I'm not going to repeat all this again to you. Today's challenges, I would say the biggest challenge we have today is the rising cost of housing. Vacancy rates in the Twin City region have been extremely low since 2011, in many cases below 3%. A healthy vacancy rate is considered 5 to 6%. So as vacancy rates go down, rents go up. Landlords get choosier. You'll recall I said it's landlords can decide if they want to participate in the program. When they have all kinds of tenants, oftentimes landlords are like, I'm out, I don't need to participate in this program. So the outreach efforts that we're doing with landlords are stronger than ever because of this. But as rents or vacancy rates go down, rents go up, and rents have really skyrocketed. This chart at the right shows vacancy rates on the bottom there going down, 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 down. The top line is rents going up, 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 up. And over the years since 2011, you'll see that split even higher. So that means rents are higher than we can afford. The dotted line there, and Joel's in the audience, correct me if I misstate this. He's probably going, oh gosh. So the dotted line there is where rent should be if it kept up with inflation. But rents have risen faster than inflation, so rents are high. The good news is our friends in research have done lots of analysis recently on rents, average rents, and we think they're starting to taper off, which would be a good thing for us. I think there's a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Who?
Chair
Oh,
Logren.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes. Terry, what is being done to address the housing shortage?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Council Member, so part of it is the voucher program, as I indicated, relies on the open rental market. So when vacancy rates are low, that means there are less rental units available. So it becomes very, very tough for renters that have barriers in their background. So if they have an eviction on their record, if they have any criminal background, it becomes very, very tough for those families to find an open rental unit. The Metro HRA has an outreach team, as I indicated, of 5 individuals. And one of them, an outreach coordinator, his sole job is to do housing search assistance and foster tenant landlord relationships. So all day, every day, he's helping high barrier voucher holders find a rental unit on the open rental market. which has proven to be successful. That was a new position for us in the summer of 2017. And he learns what landlords are willing to take tenants, for example, with maybe some barriers in the background. He has developed relationships with landlords, so he has a trusting relationship, and sometimes that's what a tenant needs to find a rental unit is for someone to be advocating on their behalf. So that's one example of what we're doing to help voucher holders find rental units. That doesn't impact the extreme shortage of affordable housing from a broader level, but that's something that the HRA is doing to help tenants be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
may I also add too, unlike some other housing and redevelopment authorities, the council does not have the redevelopment authorities that other HRAs might have. So we don't actually build housing. We don't acquire that land. We do fund projects through cities, through our Livable Communities programs, but we don't build houses at this point.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the takeaway message on this slide, which you're going to hear lots more about at a May 6th budget discussion, but I talked about the federal funding that we received to provide the subsidy for families, so $60 million a year. That's not enough to serve all of our families. Because of the rising rent. So we get a pot of money and HUD says, here's your money, now go out and serve as many families as you can. So we can't serve all of our families with the funding that we get, federal funding anymore, because of these rising rents. And so that's something we'll be doing a deeper dive at a different meeting, but I think that's the largest challenge that we're facing today in our program. And here's some upcoming meetings that I'll be with you on, and this venue and another, but as I indicated on April 4th, I'll be at the Committee of the Whole with you all, with some Metro Transit partners talking about the unsheltered homeless on the transit system. So you'll get an overview of that problem, but then the partnership that the Metro HRA and Metro Transit have linked up on that program. April 15th, Community Development Committee. Jennifer, the HRA manager, she'll be having a discussion about an HRA waiting list opening with you. As I indicated, we're getting down to the bottom of our waiting list, which means we need to reopen, and so she'll tell you what that's about and what to expect with that. And then the May 6th Community Development Committee, I will be here with our Director of Finance and Administration on a budget and funding presentation where we'll be digging into that. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Smith? Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 7,200 number, that's pretty much set by the amount of federal funding that we receive. Is that an accurate statement to say?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Council Member, yes. So we have what's called a baseline allocation, and the feds say, here's your 7,000 vouchers, essentially. Here's your money. Go out and serve as many as you can, up to 7,000. So we can't serve over 7,000 even if we had more money.
Councilmember Lindstrom.
Has that been a static number over the years pretty much, or has gone up, down?
Mr. Chair and
Smith.
Council Member, it's the only time it goes up. Let's see, I'm going to talk a little bit about this in my next presentation too, but the only time it goes up is if we get special vouchers for example, owners oftentimes have these 30-year Section 8 contracts with the federal government, and a lot of those are expiring, for example. And so if there's one that's going to expire, we just had a couple last year, but if one is about to expire, in order to prevent displacement of the existing residents, HUD will often award special vouchers for those, and then if it's in our service area, we get those. So that's really the only time it increases. New vouchers have not been awarded in many, many years, over 10 years, with the exception of these new vouchers that we just got to provide housing for the homeless persons that are utilizing the transit system as temporary shelter. That was a new voucher opportunity, which is really unheard of. So we were excited about it. We expect to see more of those types of vouchers coming in 2019 and 2020. But outside of that, general allocations have not gone up in many, many years.
Thank you. Further questions on the HRA overview?
Mr. Chair,
Councilmember Musang.
thank you. Our large family are Section 8 holders who are large family, from large families have more barriers than others, or are they facing the same barrier? That's my first question. The second one, can we get the demographics of the Section A, holders that we serve, racial makeup and the income makeup as well?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Musa, demographics, yes, I can get those for you. And then what was the first question about bedroom sizes?
Yes, if you are a Section A voucher holder and have a larger the family, do you have a more barrier than the other who are smaller the family size?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Council Member, yes. So vouchers are issued based on bedroom size, and that's according to family size. So larger families get larger voucher size, and we pay more on behalf of larger families because they're living in larger units that are more expensive. However, larger bedroom sizes are more difficult to find, as you probably can imagine. So, for example, a 2-bedroom is much easier to find than a 5-bedroom. So it can be more difficult for families to find these larger units, but we do pay more and they get a higher bedroom size if that helps.
Can one follow up?
Councilmember Musa.
Are there any additional resources or authority that we can do to help families like those families who are struggling to find?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and Council Member, so that's one of the things that our outreach team does. That person solely works with hard-to-house families. And those are people that maybe have barriers in their background, but families that are searching for larger units, for example. And because there aren't very many, they will help families find a housing unit.
Thank you. Further discussion on the HRA overview, Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, along those lines, it's related to my earlier question and Mr. Musa's question as well. I know a lot of people who are opening their homes to folks who cannot find housing, and they're trying to find whatever space they can in those homes. I have gone to family members' homes, and I see someone different on the couch every time, or a family of 3 in an upstairs bedroom. So, housing should not be a privilege. It's really a right, and I think sometimes the traditional means for and formulas for bedrooms and family sizes, it really doesn't matter if you're homeless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be interested in having some more meetings to talk about the deeper dive discussions and solutions.
Thank you. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Smith, I'm wondering on the 89 special vouchers that you got for those who are riding transit or using transit as a place to sleep, do they then take priority to find housing over others?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Cummings, those 89 vouchers were awarded specifically for that population.
Mm-hmm.
And because one of the requirements of those vouchers is that we're serving disabled homeless folks with those vouchers, we're providing some outreach services with that. We have some partnerships with some service agencies and then partly with our outreach staff to get folks housed, but then ensure they remain housed with some post-move supports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the HRA overview? Seeing none, thanks, Ms. Smith, and we'll move into the business portion of our agenda, and I believe the first item is yours as well, Ms. Schiff. It's, Ms. Smith, it's 2019-58, oops, I think that's what it is. Yes, 59, project-based voucher award recommendations. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my last one, I promise. Here's that map again.
Great.
So again, we have 6,697 vouchers. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development allows us, the council, U.S. policymakers, the discretion to project base up to 20% of those. So take some of the tenant-based vouchers and attach them to specific units in the community. They can be attached to new construction units. They can be attached to existing housing. The current council approved limit is written in our policy here that you'll get familiar with over time, but the council has approved up to 20% of its vouchers. So today we have 5,907 of our vouchers are tied to tenants. 790 are project-based, so 12% are currently project-based and attached to certain units within the community. These projects, they're located in 46 different projects in 30 different communities around the region. So we've talked a little bit about tenant-based versus project-based vouchers, but here's a chart that shows the main differences of the two types of vouchers. Under the tenant-based side, as I indicated, the vouchers tied to the tenant, they move unit to unit, place to place, state to state. They can go anywhere in the country where there's a housing authority administering a voucher program. Under both programs, the tenant pays about 30% of their income towards rent. Under the tenant-based side, I have that tenant has locational choice. And that's, of course, within limits because of the low vacancy rate and the number of rental units as a whole that are available. But it's up to the tenant to choose where they want to live. And so as policymakers and as an administrator, I hope that we have policies in place that will allow tenants to choose units in any community within the region. The tenant burden of finding a landlord willing to accept the voucher is on the tenant-based side because that's up to the tenant to find their own unit. We would love to have the resources and the outreach capacity to help all voucher holders. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but we do assist the hard-to-house families with locating a unit. Voucher openings are filled with the Metro HRA waiting list applicants. So essentially, as one person goes off the program, another one can come on. And we have about 50 vouchers turnover every single month. So that means we have 50 vouchers available every single month. And there are all kinds of nuances to that I won't get into. And then the downside of tenant-based vouchers is there tends to be a concentration of voucher holders in lower rent areas of the region. When vacancy rates are low, that tends to be where the landlords are located that are willing to accept vouchers. And there are also federal rent limits that apply to the voucher program. And so in some of those lower rent communities, that's where the rents are low enough for the tenants to find available units. On the project-based side, again, the assistance is tied to the unit. So if a tenant moves out, a new low-income family moves in to receive assistance in that unit. Again, tenant pays 30% of their income towards rent, so the rent formula is the same. Locational choice is limited. So all of the project-based voucher units, we have 790, they're full. But if one opens up, then the next person on the list gets a choice of that unit. So I have locational choice limited because they get offered the unit that's available. The landlord is already committed to the program, so if a tenant moves into one of those, they're not charged with finding a unit or a landlord that's willing to participate. Unit openings are filled either from the waiting list or through referral from service providers. For example, if there is a project, we have a project that serves female brain injury patients, and those come as direct referrals from a service provider. We're not going to our waiting list to fill those units. General occupancy units that are not for specialized populations are filled with our waiting list. Otherwise, we get referrals. And then the program really ensures that permanent affordable units are in good locations. We have choice on where we want to award those, and you'll have some of that choice tonight with this item. Here's a map of where all project-based vouchers are located. The larger dots are larger numbers of units. For example, we have some buildings that may have 58 apartments in it, but they have dedicated 4 of those units for project-based vouchers, and many of which serve homeless populations, for example. We have other buildings that may come to us through an opt-out, as I explained a little bit earlier, and in those cases we have 100 units in the building and we assist all of them. So they're really all over the map in terms of size, but because our service area is suburban, you'll see that the projects are awarded in suburban locations. In terms of the process for offering and awarding project-based vouchers, we offer them, the council has historically offered them competitively through Minnesota's request for proposals process. So once a year, Minnesota Housing issues an RFP offering all kinds of public financing from tax credits to first mortgages, county financing, And then the Livable Communities, local housing incentives dollars are offered through this process. And then the Metro HRA has historically offered vouchers through this process. So affordable housing developers can come in and it's sort of a one-stop shop. They can apply for all different sources of funding for affordable housing development. Projects are first, so that come through that process, projects are first ranked through Minnesota Housing and its funding partners, the council of which is one. Projects that are determined financially feasible, meaning they're getting other public financing necessary to move forward, are forwarded then to Metro HRA for ranking on the project-based voucher request. So for example, if a project applies for tax credits and they're not going to get their tax credits, so they're sort of dead in the water, they're not going to move forward. We're not going to commit, the council's not going to commit vouchers because we don't want to tie up vouchers into a project that's not moving forward. So projects that are moving forward and that have requested project-based vouchers are forwarded to the HRA for ranking according to the selection criteria outlined in our policy document here that's approved by you all. And that includes owner experience with affordable housing development, extent to which a project is located outside of a concentrated area of poverty. We have separate criteria for preservation projects, so the council will consider funding a project with project-based vouchers inside an area of concentrated poverty if it's preservation. And then the rest of the criteria you can see here: integration of housing and tenant services, income integration, community support, etc. In 2018, the council offered 15 project-based vouchers through this process. 11 owners requested a total of 99 project-based vouchers. That's quite a difference between requests and what we offered. However, out of those, 7 developments or 66 units were not financially feasible, meaning they weren't moving forward in the funding process to get the funding necessary to move the project forward. 4 developments, so 26 units, were financially feasible and were moving forward or were existing housing and were ranked by Metro HRA staff for project-based vouchers. And I'm going to present 2 of them today for approval, and 2 of them are not being recommended today for vouchers. Here are the 4 projects here. One is Trail Point Ridge in Eden Prairie. This is a new construction development and they requested 6 project-based vouchers, and I'm recommending 6. I will have a slide on each of these projects after that. Minnetonka Heights is an existing housing. It's a preservation project in Minnetonka that I'm recommending today for 9 vouchers. Carver County Senior Housing. The Carver County Community Development Agency submitted 2 applications, one for the senior housing here and one for a school district partnership that are not being recommended today. And I'll go through those with you briefly. So Trail Point Ridge here is a 58 unit new construction project. Common Bond is the developer on this. It'll be 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and it's part of a larger redevelopment project in Eden Prairie. The 6 PBV units here, they applied for those to serve individuals with disabilities. And those units will be filled in partnership with the Hennepin County Housing and Homeless Initiatives group. In addition to the 6 PBVs, this project will have 7 units that are dedicated to homeless individuals and families. The HRA, the Metro HRA, will not provide the subsidy on those. They received a different type of subsidy, but I think it's worth mentioning. This project is located within a half a mile to high frequency transit stops and within 2.9 miles of the new Southwest Light Rail line. There's a mix of incomes at this project. There's a mixed use at this project, and there's also other funding. There was a $900,000 award of Metropolitan Livable Communities funding the end of 2018. This project also was awarded tax credits through Minnesota Housing, federal home dollars through Hennepin County, and then tax increment financing through Eden Prairie. So there's a lot of community support for this project. Oh, I should say that the 6 project-based units will receive services through Hennepin County as well. Minnetonka Heights, this is a good example of a preservation project in Minnetonka. So this is a 172 unit building that was purchased by an out-of-town investor. You may have read about some of these projects. We're calling them naturally occurring affordable housing. So no developments, meaning they have naturally lower rents because of the lack of amenities and the age of the units. But there have been several cases where out-of-town investors come in, buy up the property, throw in some granite countertops, increase the rents $300-400, and all the residents are displaced as part of it. So there have been several examples of that here in the region over the last couple of years. Here's a situation where an outside investor came in, purchased this 172 units, and they're wanting to put some tools in place to keep the rents affordable for the existing residents, which I think is a good example of this. These are 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, apartments, and townhomes. They have a contract, a federal Section 8 contract for 90 of the units. They're being awarded 53 of these special vouchers from HUD that I talked about when one of the council members asked if we ever get new vouchers. These are some of those new vouchers. So HUD is awarding 53 of those, which will come to the council, so it will increase our total voucher capacity. 20 residents have housing choice vouchers, so they have one of the tenant-based vouchers through the council's HRA, so they're already assisted. And I'm proposing today 9 project-based vouchers for the remaining 9 units that will prevent displacement of the remaining 9 residents here at this project. And then there were 2 Carver County projects that I indicated I'm not recommending today. One is a school district partnership, which is a really cool partnership that I'm excited about. And we have some similar arrangements with Carver County and some other buildings, but it's a partnership that would provide rent subsidy to homeless families in the district. The problem with this one is they have not purchased the units yet, so they're not eligible for project-based vouchers because they don't own these units yet. They can apply at a later date once they purchase the units for project-based vouchers, and we consider it at that time. Their second application was to provide project-based vouchers for units in 3 different senior buildings, general occupancy senior buildings, and I'm not recommending award only because they didn't score as high as Minnetonka Heights and Trail Ridge Crossing that I earlier went through. We do have partnerships with Carver County for some senior buildings already that provide affordable units for seniors, but I'm not recommending those today purely for a scoring reason. Next steps, if I gain your approval today for Trail Point Ridge, because that's new construction, we will enter into an agreement to enter into a contract with them. It's essentially a contract that commits the project-based vouchers during the construction period. Once construction is complete, we will do an inspection of the units to make sure they are healthy, safe units for the program participants. We will enter into a 20-year contract with that ownership group and begin making rent payments on behalf of the housing unit occupants there. Those units, because they serve specialized populations, those 6 project-based voucher units will be filled with referrals from the Hennepin County Homeless and Housing Initiatives unit. Minnetonka Heights, because it's an existing building, will enter right into a 20-year contract with them. We'll meet with all of the existing residents to make sure that they're eligible for the program, so they meet income guidelines. We will inspect all the units because those are existing older housing units. They've done some updating on them, but we'll make sure that they meet health and safety standards. And then again, we'll begin paying rent on behalf of the tenants there. And so with that, Mr. Chair, my recommendation today is I'm asking for the Metropolitan Council approval of the award of project-based vouchers and authorize staff to execute the necessary documents for the projects listed here. 6 project-based vouchers for Trail Point Ridge and 9 project-based vouchers for Minnetonka Heights. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Ms. Smith. I do have a few council members with questions. Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, with the project with like Minnetonka Heights, how does a project like that come to this body? Is it from activist residents or is it from their local officials? Because I remember a few years back, similar situation happened in Richfield.
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and council member, this project, actually, the ownership group reached out to us about project-based vouchers. We did not know about it until they actually contacted us to inquire about project-based vouchers. So sometimes we find out through residents, sometimes it's through the city. In this case, it was the new ownership group that reached out to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions on this item? Councilmember Bento.
I'm good.
Oh, you're calling. Thank you. Further discussion on this item? Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Smith, just as a point of clarification, so you're not recommending the 15 because they don't need the 15?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair and council member, we offered 15 total, and so I'm recommending 9 for Minnetonka Heights and 6 for Trail Point. The numbers worked out. Trail Point was actually the higher scoring project, but they only requested 6, and it worked out that we have 9 available for Minnetonka, and that's what they need. So the numbers just worked out this year.
Thank you. Further discussion, further questions on this item? Councilmember Chambliss.
So in terms of the number of vouchers available, I understand the bullet points on the criteria. How much input does the city have as far as the percentage of vouchers per project?
Ms. Smith.
So, Mr. Chair and council member, the city, I would say, in a broad perspective, has input, and the points that are awarded in the scoring of these applications would come through community support. So if the city has maybe some TIF financing, that would be considered some community support. But I think it's broader than that. The city doesn't have any legal authority or statutory authority in terms of where we award project-based vouchers. We more look at them as a partner in some of these projects.
Okay, one more question.
Councilmember Chambliss.
So that means there's no baseline percentage for affordable units in a project?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, there are broader housing goals, affordable housing goals that each city has that comes out of our policy, the council's policy unit that I'll let Lisa talk about if you want more on that.
Yeah.
But in terms of project-based vouchers, there are no requirements for cities.
Ms. Barajas.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Chambliss. What Terry was alluding to was in our housing policy plan, and in the work that the council does in working with cities on their comprehensive planning, we set the allocation of the regional need of affordable housing need by community, and then communities determine how they're going to support that. It's not on a project-specific basis always. Some cities choose when they may have requirements if they put city dollars or TIF or something else in that to have some sort of requirements around affordable housing being included in projects, but that's really variable city by city whether or not they want to do that and whether or not they have those requirements on a project basis.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this item?
Mr. Chair,
Councilmember Mousse.
how many 3-bedrooms out there total?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Musa, I will have to get back to you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can
Still fine.
follow up in an email.
Thank you. Further questions on this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion that the Metropolitan Council approve the award of the project-based voucher assistance and authorize staff to execute the necessary documents with the project owners for the following 2 projects: Minnetonka Heights awarded 9, to be awarded 9, Trail Point Ridge to be awarded 6. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion on this item? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. So we'll move on to our next business item, 2018-334, updated bylaws of the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. And it said it was going to be, it says Ms. Starling on here, but you're not. You must be Mr. Mullen.
Hello, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. I am Emmett Mullen. I'm the Regional Parks Manager here at the Metropolitan Council. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
we have three parks items coming to you this afternoon. Um, and for your consideration, the first is our advisory committee, the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, their bylaws. Then we have a utility change at Lebanon Hills Regional Park in Dakota County. And finally, we have an acquisition of 8 easements for the Robert Pieram Regional Trail in St. Paul. All three of these items were reviewed by the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission and are recommended to you for your consideration today. So
Thank you.
that's what I need. Here's the first one, the Parks and Open Space bylaws. We're updating the bylaws, and the impetus behind the update is really just to move the day on which the commission is meeting. We currently meet on the first Tuesday of the month, and we want to move it to the first Thursday simply because there are fewer conflicts in the calendar. Every year we have the first Tuesday, and it runs into a couple of elections every year, a few holidays, and the first Thursday will be a better day for us. That said, we thought that this updating of the bylaws would just be a good opportunity to provide you with a little overview of who the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission is. The commission, it advises the council on matters related to the regional park system. They're established in Minnesota state statute. They were established in 1974 by the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Act. That's the same act that sort of established the regional park system. They consist of 8 commissioners and a chair, and it's a nonpartisan group. The responsibilities of the commission. The commission helps establish and update our regional parks policy plan. It's probably, you remember that's what Libby Starling was talking about. Other responsibilities are to review regional park and trail master plans that are prepared by our 10 regional park implementing agencies. We review all funding to the regional parks implementing agencies. And then one of the responsibilities of the commission is to communicate with you, the council members, as well as regional park implementing agencies, their boards, legislators, and with local government officials. So the bylaws, what do? They govern how the commission conducts business. They establish our order of our agenda. They establish the roles and responsibilities of the chair and commission members, and they establish expectations of the members. Again, the reason we're updating the bylaws is really just to move the day. The commission meets from the first Tuesday of the month to the first Thursday of the month. We also worked with our general counsel and just got some housekeeping updates that were bringing our bylaws in line with other council commissions and advisory committees. And so the recommendation for you today with this action is to approve the updated bylaws of the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, changing the regular meeting of the commission to the first Thursday of each month and making other housekeeping changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Questions on that report? Any questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion on 2018-334.
So moved.
Councilmember Wolf moving, and it looks like Councilmember Vento seconding. Further discussion? Further discussion. Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Could we have the PowerPoint put up just for a second? I had a quick advertisement for our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, if we
We'll
can.
pause for a commercial break here.
Oh, thank you.
Greg's listening, yay.
Greg is on it
Thank
as
you.
usual.
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry. So here's the opportunity. Currently, 4 of our seats are open. That would be District E. Our current commissioner is Michael Kopp. That's District E is made up of District 9, Councilmember Zaran, and District 10, Councilmember Lindstrom. We are looking for a new commissioner in District E. Similarly, in District F, we're looking for a new commissioner. The current commissioner is Sarah Hippus, and this is in District 11. That's Councilmember Vento's district, and District 12, Councilmember Gonzalez. District G, our current commissioner is Anthony Taylor, and I just want to say that Commissioner Taylor has reapplied for a seat, for your information. And this is District 13, Councilmember Lee, and District 14, Councilmember Fredson. And finally, District H, current commissioner is Todd Kemery. And he's actually reapplied also. This is District 15, Councilmember Sterner, and District 16. I'm sorry, I forgot to put who's that. So if you have any ideas of people who live in these districts, please encourage them to apply. We'd like to have a good suite of applicants to interview coming up soon.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
And now our second part.
Oh, I'm sorry. Question from Councilmember Lindstrom.
Just wondering, there's no deadline for those open seats, or is there?
Thank you,
You
sir.
may have
Mullen.
addressed
Question.
that, sorry.
Yeah, no, I meant to cover that. These seats are open until filled. Okay, so today's the 18th. I hope we're going to try to get this up and running even later this month. I'm working with our with Katie Driscoll, who I think helped with the council member appointments, and we are looking to hold interviews toward the end of this month or early April, and I think that we're going to be doing that in concert with the Equity Advisory Committee. So it's going to be a interesting and kind of large process. So
Thank you.
thanks for asking that.
Thank you. Seeing no
All those appointments are at the Secretary of State's website. You can find the commission appointments.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 2019-51, the Lebanon Hills Regional Park Utility Change. Mr. Mullen.
Well, thank you. I'm going to introduce this, and then I will turn it over to our very capable Tracy Kinney, who's our parks planner in the Parks Unit, one of two planners that work in our Parks Unit. As our chair just said, this is the Lebanon Hills Regional Park Utility Change, and Lebanon Hills is located in Dakota County. I want to just step back for a second today and talk a little bit about the council's policy framework, as I know you've already learned about. That's the Thrive MSP 2040. This is the council's overarching strategic document. And this is the umbrella document that frames our three system plans: the Transportation Policy Plan, the Water Resources Policy Plan, and then the Regional Parks Policy Plan. And it's the Regional Parks Policy Plan that establishes the policies and strategies for the regional parks system. It clearly identifies that the 10 regional park implementing agencies as the owners and operators of the system, and it provides the guidance and funding information for the system. As Libby said earlier, she didn't say there's 113 total units, but there's 44 regional parks, there's 12 park reserves, there are 8 special recreation features, and there are 49 regional trails with almost 400 miles of trails, so it's a large system. Now I'm zooming into what's in front of us today, the utility change. This is proposed for Lebanon Hills Regional Park. We look to both the Regional Parks Policy Plan for guidance, as well as the 2015 Council-approved Master Plan for Lebanon Hills, which is it establishes the boundary and the proposed uses of the park unit. Dakota County is requesting the council's consent to an easement to upgrade and move an existing electric transmission infrastructure, a big power corridor that runs right through the middle of the park. And they're proposing to move this large line and upgrade it to the periphery of the park. So overall, I'm just giving you the unabashed recommendation that it's a really good move. In exchange, another easement would be released. That's the old transmission corridor that runs through the park. The land underneath that old corridor will be restored and to native plants and trees, as well as there will be improved recreation opportunities throughout the park. The council, as we evaluate this request, we consider the conversion of the regional parkland to other uses only if the conversion won't harm the regional park system. And we look to Chapter 6 in the Regional Parks Policy Plan, which guides our system protection, and specifically Strategy 6, that has to do with utility placements, and Strategy 2, which has to do with conversion of regional park system lands to other uses. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Tracy Kinney, who will talk more about the details of this proposal.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Kinney.
Thank you, Chair Lildrigan, committee members. My name is Tracy Kinney. I'm the planner in regional parks and natural resources. And I'll just extend Emmett's conversation a little bit by saying that since the council guides and funds the regional park system, council-approved master plans are the council's mechanism to ensure development is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. The council considers changes to the council-approved master plans. Today, you will be considering a recommendation for the council's consent to an easement for a utility change in Lebanon Hills Regional Park. Lebanon Hills Regional Park is located in the southwest portion of the regional park system. As you see before you, it's indicated by the blue arrow. The other park units are in green. Some of the search corridors are in yellow, and we'll talk about that more as you get involved with the council. In the Lebanon Hills Regional Park has a council-approved master plan as of 2015, and it has over 1,870 acres that are open to the public. So today before you, the request is your recommendation for the council's consent for a utility easement, which is shown in red in that upper right-hand corner of the Lebanon Hills Regional Park, that would allow Great River Energy to upgrade an existing electric transmission line and secure land for the utility in perpetuity. So currently, Great River Energy has a transmission line indicated in red there, and they have developed it through a permit. In exchange for this new easement, they would take the existing easement that is running from north to south, that's owned by Xcel Energy, and release the easement to Dakota County at no charge, remove the infrastructure, and then pay Dakota County to restore that land to prairie. This, in effect, is a story of mending the natural resources, essentially reconnecting that fabric of the park, allowing for ecological function. So those critters will be able to move back and forth in the park, and then allow the park to have more access for recreational opportunities in the future. So the new easement shown in orange in the upper right-hand corner represents 35 feet minimum width that is around 4.04 acres that is necessary for the transmission line. This is the minimum necessary for the transmission line. Great River Energy will be upgrading their transmission line to meet future demand. Essentially, right now, it's old and outdated, and it does not meet the demand for the future. The proposed utility towers are going to be a little taller and similarly spaced, and the area will then be managed for prairie. So currently, right now, it's a line. It has existing towers there. In the future, it will look very similar. Dakota County will be then allowed to restore it to prairie. The easement running from north to south, shown in blue and yellow, is the Excel Energy line. It is 4.28 acres of both Dakota County land, which is in blue, and a private holding called Camp Butland, which is in yellow. It's about 50 feet wide, and as I said before, it will be released. The infrastructure will be removed, and it will be restored to prairie, allowing for that free movement for ecology matters and for recreational opportunities. So staff uses, as Emmett had mentioned, the policy plan to evaluate whether there is park system impacts. And system protection chapter 6, strategy 6, allows for the placement of utilities in regional park system, particularly regional park units, like the one that you're evaluating for today. What's key to this strategy is for you in the bullet points. One is to encourage collaboration amongst the implementing agencies with the utility providers to reduce the impact on the park, and two, the utility provider may have to pay for an easement or a lease of the land based on the benefit that that utility provides the regional park system unit. Staff finds that Dakota County has worked to accomplish the criteria and strategy 6 placement of utilities. Staff also finds that since the land is changing from a permit to a permanent easement, that the use of the land will be changing from regional recreational open space to utility use. So system protection strategy 2 then comes into play, which means that the land will be converted to another use. So the council considers conversion of regional parkland to other uses only if it will not harm the park system itself. And strategy 2 outlines that criteria. There's 10 criteria. Part of that is an equally valuable land exchange. An equally valuable land exchange is outlined by being contiguous to the park system unit. It has comparable or better natural resource characteristics, and it can provide comparable or better recreation opportunities. Staff analyzed all 10 of the criteria that's in the policy plan and found that it meets all of these criteria. Specifically, one of the criteria 2, I will highlight for you whether the park system will continue to function as it has originally planned. As I had mentioned before, Lebanon Hills Regional Park has a 2015 council-approved master plan, and within it, this area where this 4.04 easement is planned to be, there's a couple of elements that are there, but it's quite at a quite high level scale. There's some rare woods, there's an internal trail, and then there's continuous and ongoing invasive species management, as you can imagine, because it's a right-of-way along a busy corridor. Dakota County has addressed each of these. In order to scope for the easements, they have done a tree inventory and have removed some of the trees, but then also have worked with Great River Energy to secure funding for ongoing maintenance and ongoing arborist review of this area. There has been invasive species management that continues and will be ongoing. And then the connector trail, which is an internal trail to the park system, doesn't exist yet. The county will be undertaking a feasibility study in 2021 to help determine this alignment, and it doesn't come close to this area actually when we dug a little deeper into it. So the proposed master plan is consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, specifically Chapter 6, System Protection Strategy 6, Placement of Utilities, Chapter 6, System Protection Strategy 2, Conversion of Regional Park System lands to other uses, and Chapter 4, citing and acquisition policy, regional parks, general criteria, which comes into play with that land conversion strategy, and other council policies, particularly Thrive 2040. So before you is a recommendation for the Metropolitan Council to consent to an easement to allow Dakota County to issue a 4.04 acre utility easement to Great River Energy to upgrade the existing 69 kilovolt transmission line to a double circuit 115 kilovolt transmission line. And then 2, to advise Dakota County that Minnesota Management and Budget must consent to Dakota County's easement described in Recorded Declaration 3.235301. And if you'd like a little bit more information about that second item, I have that in the business item, or I can take any additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kinney, for your report and for your work on this. Any questions on this report? Questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve this staff recommendation.
Move approval.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilmember. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have one question.
Councilmember Bento.
Can't imagine what the answer to this could be, but is there any opposition to this?
Ms.
Chair.
Kinney.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I didn't do that properly.
That's all right. We're getting it. Getting it done. Ms.
Chair,
Kinney.
committee member, it is not to my knowledge that there has been any opposition to this. Dakota County has conducted a public hearing with which the Dakota County Board has approved it, and they had also mentioned a few targeted conversations with advocacy groups and their steering committee group. I can also follow up if you're interested.
It doesn't require any follow-up. Yeah, just was curious.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final business item, 2019-28, Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund Grant for Robert Piram Regional Trail. Mr. Mullen.
I'm back.
And welcome back.
This is the third and final parks item. Deb Jensen was not able to be here today. She's our senior parks finance planner, and so I am happy to present it to you. The Robert Piram Regional Trail easements. This is, as Deb, I think, introduced to the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, she said this is deliciously complex because if I could just step back and say, we are always learning in the regional park system and in the Metropolitan Council's Parks Unit. And I think in the future, we will break up all application requests. We bundled the 8 easements together. There are 5 landowners, and it worked out fine. And we learned that it would be better to break them out by landowner in the future. And so we will be doing that. Councilmember Wolf was smiling at me because she has been our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space liaison, and she is welcome to help me in this presentation if there are opportunities. Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen and I open that door to you too as our new liaison. So here's the third of 3 parks items. The Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund program is one of 4 regional park grant programs that we operate. The other ones are the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund program, the Regional Parks Bonding Program, and the Operation and Maintenance Program. Today I'm going to focus on the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, or as we call it, the PAOF program. Very catchy. This program assists our 10 partner agencies with acquisitions and easements throughout the Metropolitan Regional Park System. So this afternoon, we are before you to ask for your recommendation for a grant to the City of St. Paul for the Robert Piram 8 easements. We work very closely with these 10 regional park implementing agencies. We don't actually own or operate an acre of land. The 10 agencies do. So we really have a role of convener as well as a system protection role. Since 1975, these 4 programs the council has administered almost $1 billion in regional parks grants to the regional park system. So really a considerable amount of money has gone out the door. So now I have this little graph that helps represent the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund funding sources. The first one is the state funding. There are two constitutionally dedicated sources of state funding. The first is the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, and the second is the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. And the state funding make up 45% of the grant. The council then matches the state funding on a $3 to $2 match. So that makes up the next 30%. So we're up to 75. And then, so that's the Metropolitan Council grant to the implementing agencies. And then the park implementing agencies provide the final 25% match for the acquisitions. Here is a map of the regional park system. Excuse me. This slide gives you just an idea of the breadth of the regional park system. All those green blobs and green lines connecting the blobs are the regional park system. As we go into, we bring all of our parks items to the Community Development Committee, and so you're going to learn more and more about all the different park units in the coming months. So the Robert Piram Regional Trail, when completed, it'll be a 3.4 mile regional trail named after Robert Piram, who was a 28-year career superintendent for the St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department. It will run from Kaposia Park in West St. Paul to Harriet Island and then on to Lilydale Regional Park and further in St. Paul. So the property that is the subject of today's action is just south of downtown St. Paul. And here it is. The portion of the trail within the St. Paul is shown here as the orange dotted line, which is a little hard to see on that. The location of the easements that are subject to this request are shown with the red arrow. So that's the general location. Holman Field is right there, and of course the Mississippi River. This is a more complicated request than we normally bring to you, in that it comprises 8 parcels. Normally our partner agencies request easements one at a time. However, because these easements are contiguous, the city presented them as a unified request. As you can see from the parcels shown in the shaded green, the easements run in a line east of Holman Field and along East Lafayette Road. The 8 easements are held by 5 separate owners, as I said, and will present the easements by location and owner. So, another complicating factor in this complicated request is that 4 of the owners have allowed utility easements across their parcels. So the trail easements run, the future regional trail easements will run over the utility easements. And because of the presence of utility easements, it was a factor in the negotiated price for the easements, which we'll point out to you in the next few slides. So I'm going to walk through each of the 8 parcels, so thank you for your patience. So parcels 1 and 2, the owner is 345 Plato Boulevard. I guess the owner is Summit LP. These are the northernmost 2 parcels. Both parcels are owned by 345 Plato Boulevard East, and they have utility easements in place. When each parcel was appraised, the appraisers took into account the value of the utility easement that was already there. That value was deducted from the recommended price for the trail easement, And 7 of the 8 owners, I guess you could say, weren't happy. They took issue with the amounts that were deducted from the trail easement prices, and the city undertook a lengthy negotiation with this group of owners. The council will typically not pay more than 110% of the appraised value. That's our sort of operating procedure. So we don't pay more than 110% of the appraised value. In the end, the city agreed to pay prices that were significantly above the 110%. And these 2 parcels, for instance, are priced at 139% of the appraised value. You'll notice that when we present the overall grant recommendation, we're limiting the involvement of the state and regional funds to no more than 110% of the appraised value. So we're sticking to our policy, with the city paying the difference. So here's the 3rd parcel. This is going to go quicker. This is the next parcel southward. It's owned by RBP Realty LLC. It also has a utility easement across it, and the negotiated price for this property was 140% of the appraised value. Here is parcel 4. This next parcel is the only one that did not have a utility easement. It's owned by Catholic Charities, and as such, it is priced at 100% of the appraised value. Parcel 5. This is owned by Riverview Triangle LCC, or LLC, excuse me, and its purchase price is 140% of the appraised value. Here's parcels 6 and 7. The next 2 southward, they're owned by Eaton Street LLC. These do have a utility easement, and they were priced at 140% of the appraised value. And finally, the 8th parcel. The final parcel is also owned by Eaton Street LLC, but it is presented separately because the price negotiated was slightly different than Eaton Street's other parcels. It was 138% of the appraised value. So here is the sort of the spreadsheet. The total combined appraised value of the 8 easements is $141,900, while the total agreed purchase price was $192,241. Of that, staff recommends granting funds to include $154,070, which represents 100% of the appraised value for Catholic Charities parcel and 110% of the appraised value for the other 7 easements. So when we bring you grant recommendations, we'll always inform you of the areas of the request that are consistent with council policy. And in cases like this one, also where the original request is inconsistent. These easements do meet the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. The latest version, which was approved in November 2018. The acquisitions are also consistent with the master plan for the regional trail, which is council approved in 2017. The original request, however, is inconsistent with the practice because it was asking for more than that 110% appraised value. And for that reason, we recommend reducing the request amount to match our practice. The city is very aware of this, and they understand our reasoning, and this recommendation is not a surprise to them. So, as recommended, this grant would be funded with state fiscal year 2019 appropriation from the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund in the amount of $80,581. The council will match that amount with $53,722 in council bonds for a total grant amount of $134,303. The total project cost with the reduced amounts for the 7 of the 8 easements is $179,070. The city must pay 25% of that amount as required match, or $44,767. They must also pay the amount of the purchase price over the 110% of appraised value. The city has also requested that the council consider reimbursing the city for its required match at some point in the future. This practice is known as future reimbursements consideration. When the council approves this, and if they approve it, it means that in a future round of regional parks bonding, the city may request reimbursements for up to $44,767 as part of its bonding share. The council issues strong caveats that agreeing to consider reimbursement does not mean it guarantees reimbursing the city. It does not incur any liability on the part of the council. The recommendation in front of you is to approve a grant of up to $134,303 to the city of St. Paul to acquire 8 trail easements comprising 54,902 square feet of permanent easements at the following locations in the city of St. Paul for the Robert Piran Regional Trail. And this is parcels 1 and 2, that's Summit LLP, parcels 3, that's RBP Realty LLC. Parcel 4 is the Catholic Charities parcel. Parcel 5 is Riverview Triangle LLC. And parcels 6, 7, and 8, that's Eaton Street LLC. The other part of the action is to authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenants on behalf of the council. Consider reimbursing the city for up to $44,767 from its share of a future regional parks bonding program, and inform the city that the council does not under any circumstance represent or guarantee that the council will grant future reimbursement, and that expenditures of local funds never entitles a park agency to reimbursement. So thank you for bearing with me today. That is the action in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Questions on that report? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I went to high school on the west side, so I'm really excited for this trail. But on the slide where you show the finances, I was just wondering why are Parks and Trails Legacy Fund listed at the bottom? Does that mean that's where the money will come from now or in the future?
Mr. Mullen.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Lee, the red signifies that that's the state portion of this, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, and the regional portion of this, the council funds. And that's the amount that the grant will be $134,303.
Okay.
So that's what the city will receive.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for the complex chart.
Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that number 179,070 is bigger than that list that was on the cost of all of the parcels, because the eligible costs also include the costs of the appraisal in addition to the land cost.
Thank you for that clarification. Further discussion, Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
So I have one question and one recommendation. The one question is, does the reduction at all jeopardize the possibility of the project for the city?
Mr. Mullen.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen, it doesn't. The city is aware of the reduction, and they're aware of the policy that the council only funds up to 110% of an appraised value of a land purchase.
Okay. Chair, and Mr. Mullen, my recommendation, or one thing I'd love to see, is when we're looking at projects like this, it'd be great in the map to see what are the connections to other trails or parks that are a part of that. It just allows us, I think, as a group to understand how it fits in the system, if you will. I also think it would be wonderful, especially for projects funded through Parks and Trails Legacy Advisory or legacy funds, to see underserved populations, or how this connects to the pillars of the 25-year plan for those funds, just so that we're making that connection as well. And opportunities in a transit context, it'd also be fun to see opportunities for connections to transit. Thanks.
Mr. Mullen. You look like you were going to say something. That's it.
Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen and Chair Lilligren, thank you for that recommendation. That's really all I was going to say. I think those are great ideas. The transit connections is something that we, let me say, are getting a handle on. We don't, but we have a really exciting idea for a project this summer to try to understand better the intersections of our transit system, our regional park system.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the master plan for this trail was approved, there was extensive discussion at the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission about what is how it's serving the overall system. I don't know that it's necessarily that we'd have the time to make that same presentation every time we're just doing money, but it's very relevant when the master plan comes through, because that is a key place. There's sidewalks there. I mean, it's a developed area and there's sidewalks, but there was kind of this gap in the system where you'd come off of the regional trail system and then you kind of go whichever sidewalk you wanted for a while to get to the rest of the regional system. So this is a key linkage in the regional park system.
Thank you for the history. Further discussion on this item? Further discussion? Councilmember Lee, did you want to move approval of 2019-28?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Further discussion. Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I wasn't voting no. This is okay, just be clear. I was going to vote. Great. All right. We have dispensed with our business items on our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Ms. Barajas, is there any other business to come before us?
Mr. Chair, I think you might want to determine which items as a group will go consent or non-consent on the council calendar at our next council meeting. Generally, the council's practice is to, for funding and for awards, that we do those as non-consent.
Okay.
And any controversial items as non-consent as well. But you can choose.
All right. So thanks for that guidance. And so the only funding related item is 2019-59, correct?
That's correct.
So we'll move that, and then the rest would be the easement? Okay, so we'll move with...
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The Robert Pirum item is a funding request.
Okay, great, thank you. So if there's no objection from committee members, we would move 2019-59 and 2019-28 to, do you call it the discussion agenda or
the committee report?
The committee report, and then the other two items we would move forward for the consent agenda. Any objection? Seeing none, we'll do that. And anything else?
That's all I have.
Any items of committee members? Seeing none, we're adjourned.